Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCullum, and I am joined today by retired Master Sergeant John Keene, currently of the Morphe's Auction Company. He is their NFA machine gun expert. And I want to pose a question to you today because there are a lot of different types of machine guns out there in a legal sense.
Correct.
And if you start looking to buy a machine gun, you're going to start seeing terms like Dewat, Transferrable, PreMay, Post-May, dealer sample, police letter, or demo letter. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. And I'm hoping you can help clarify for us, what are all these different things?
Sure. I'll be happy to do that the best I can. Really, from top status down to the less, and actually more restricted status, the first thing you would look for is a curio and relic amnesty registered gun.
Okay.
That's a gun that has the widest possible population of potential buyers who can take possession of them.
Now, a curio and relic machine gun, it's not going to gain anything else by being amnesty registered, is it? As opposed to just registered in any other way?
As we had a brief discussion earlier before we turned on the camera, everything that was registered in the amnesty of 1968 is now more than 50 years old.
Good point. No matter what it was, CNR status applies to any gun 50 years old. 1968 was the amnesty. It's now 2019.
Right.
Good point.
And I had a conversation with somebody indirectly with the BATF who had made a phone call on behalf of the auction company and came back and said, well, they wanted to talk about curio and relic status. And I said, once they agreed that it was amnesty registered in 68, the question about whether it's curio and relic is a moot one because it has to be. I might caveat that statement, but
so who can, if it's curio and relic as a machine gun, who can buy that? Like, what's the process?
Okay, if it's a curio and relic machine gun, and you're a curio and relic license holder, you can actually purchase that machine gun and have it go through the approval process, Form 4 approval process that we're all familiar with, of paying your $200 transfer tax, filling out the form, photographs, fingerprints, sending it into the BATF, and you can have that gun transferred to you directly across state lines. That's an advantage of being a curio and relic license holder and buying a curio and relic machine gun. There are also states that are still curio and relic only machine gun states, Minnesota being a really good example of one. The BATF won't approve a fully transferable gun to somebody in Minnesota.
Unless it's CNR?
Unless it's CNR.
Interesting.
CNR.
Now, what if I don't have a CNR license? Can I still buy a CNR machine gun?
Absolutely. You can buy a CNR machine gun that's fully transferable, and you can transfer it to the dealer in your state where you live, and then that dealer can transfer it to you. The dealer-to-dealer transfer, like say Morphe's to the dealer in your state, that's a relatively rapid transfer. And then the dealer in your state to you is that exact same Form 4 process where you fingerprint cards, photographs, fill it out, sign it, send it in, wait currently 6 to 9 months, and then the transfer comes to you. Now, I want to say that not all states allow the private ownership of machine guns. You always have to check what your local state laws are before you go off and buy a machine gun, and then find out, I can't get that. I'm living in the state that doesn't allow it.
So what's the difference between a CNR gun, like a CNR transferable gun, and just a gun that's transferable?
Okay, as I said, a CNR transferable gun can go directly to a CNR license holder. A gun that's just fully transferable but not curio and relic eligible has to go to that dealer in your state first before it can come to you.
Okay.
So if you're a regular eligible adult to be able to own a machine gun and you're not a CNR license holder, you can still buy a transferable machine gun, go to your dealer, and then to you. So there really isn't very much difference, except those CNR licenses are a little bit better for those people who live in states that only allow curio and relic eligible machine guns, or if you want to eliminate that middleman or middle person dealer that is in between you and the gun you want to own.
Okay. So transferable basically just means anybody can own it. As long as you can pass the background check,
Right. As long as
fill
you're,
out the form.
yes, a good shorthand might be as long as your state allows it,
Yes.
and if you're able to purchase a handgun, you're probably going to be all right to be able to purchase a machine gun.
Okay. So now we've got there's this whole extra batch. We see dealer sample, PreMay, Pre-86, Post-May, Post-86.
Correct.
What is all that stuff?
Okay. A Pre-86 dealer sample gun is a gun that was imported for demonstration or law enforcement or use or for a dealer that was before the Firearm Owners Protection Act, which occurred in May of 1986. Those guns are restricted, and they can only go from a dealer to an active FLSOT dealer to another active FLSOT dealer is when they're in the hands of an active FLSOT dealer. Let me see if I can make it a little more succinctly. A Pre-86 dealer sample can be retained by an active FLSOT dealer privately when they relinquish their license, if they are in a sole proprietor status,
Okay.
and as long as it's in accordance with state law.
Okay.
So if Ian McCullum was an FFL-SOT dealer, and you purchased a pre-May 86 dealer sample from Morphy Auctions, we would transfer it to you, Form 3, quick to you. You would bring it in on your FLSOT license. You could have it for a number of years. And then the day comes in the distant future where you decide you're going to relinquish that license. You can retain that pre-May 86 dealer sample machine gun privately.
Okay.
And what's more is when the time comes for you to prepare your estate planning, you could leave it to a lawful heir,
Really?
even if that lawful heir was never a machine gun dealer or even had the gun at all in their lifetime, as long as they were otherwise eligible, within state law, over 21, good history, and that's already been tested and through 2 generations.
Okay.
So the pre-86 dealer samples used to be rather reasonably priced, but as the prices of the fully transferable guns has increased significantly, there's been a whole subgenre of collectors who are very interested in acquiring pre-86 dealer samples. They are less costly than the fully transferable guns because the population of people who can acquire them is much smaller.
Right.
And the people who have the fully transferable guns, who are private individuals who don't have licenses, they're generally not subject to inspection but by the VATF and compliance visitations, like anybody who's an active FFL-SOT dealer. And so you have people who are FFL-SOT dealers, and they are often, you see them buying those pre-86 dealer samples and then selling the identical specimen model that they have that's fully transferable and pocketing the difference in the money in their favor.
You said SOT. What is that?
That is a special occupational taxpayer. There are numerous regular FFL dealers out there who are active dealers. They buy and sell handguns and rifles and shotguns and modern firearms and antique weapons as well. But someone who has got a special occupational taxpayer license who wants to deal in machine guns, they have a special status.
Okay.
And that is what allows us to say, do a Form 3 transfer without paying transfer tax being paid, dealer, active dealer to active dealer.
Okay, so it's basically someone who is a machine gun dealer by trade and licensed as
That's
such.
right, but an SOT actually encompasses a lot more. There are manufacturers and but it all depends on what you do. Your license will determine what you do.
I hear a lot of people talking about a Class 3 license that you need to own a machine gun.
It's very, very widespread misconception that, this is a misconception. that you have to have a federal firearms license or a special license in order to buy a machine gun and renew that license all the time.
It's a Class 3 license, I've been told many times.
And what it is, it's for a transferable gun going to an individual. It's a one-time transfer tax. You do not need to hold a federal firearms license. You do not need to hold a special occupational taxpayer's license. You just need to go through the background check process, the application approval process, and pay that $200 transfer tax to yourself as an individual. You don't need to get a license. But it is very, very much just call it a shorthand misunderstanding that, oh, you got to have a license to have a machine gun. No, you just need to have a thorough background check and be approved by the BATF.
And how often is the BATF going to come inspect me if I own a machine gun?
If you are not a active federal firearms license dealer and you're not a curio and relic license holder, they are not going to come and inspect what you have for guns unless someone has made some kind of an allegation for a criminal act or a criminal investigation or something like that. My father is in his 80s. He's had machine guns for more than 50 years, and he has never had the BATF because he's never done anything other than be a private citizen who has registered machine guns.
Okay. Now, we got slightly off track. There's still some types of guns that we haven't talked about, and those are these post-86 samples.
Yes.
So we talked about pre-86 samples. So pre-86 sample can only be owned by a dealer, but they get to keep it after they relinquish their license, like if they decide to stop being in business. There's
a lot of little complexities about how it all works for pre-86 and post-86 dealer samples, but you just essentially said it quite well. Dealers who relinquish their licenses, heirs to dealers who have relinquished their licenses, sometimes people who have worked like chiefs of police or people in the law enforcement community, they may have acquired a gun. Again, the laws have evolved somewhat over the last, let's say 85 years since 1934 Gun Control Act. But what you said was actually quite good and quite concise. A post-May 86 dealer sample is a gun.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second.
Yes.
Post-May, post-86, are those the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
If I say post-86, that's a colloquial or abbreviated term for a post-May 1986 dealer sample.
Okay.
So when you hear the word post-86 or post-May 1986 or post-86, that all means the same thing in the National Firearms Act, collecting community, as it were, community speak, NFA speak, if you would. So you have post-May 86 dealer samples, and those guns are the most restricted of all the machine gun classifications, meaning they are in the hands of either government or law enforcement or active FFL SOT dealers.
Okay.
You cannot keep a post-May 86 dealer sample when you relinquish your license. You have to either find somebody else who will buy it or transfer it to another dealer, transfer it to a government or law enforcement, or you can cut it into pieces and say it's destroyed, and away it goes.
And there are some guns where once you cut it in half, now you have a parts kit, and you can sell that on the
I had a number of people over the years who have said, I can sell the gun for more money as a parts kit than I can as a post-May 86 dealer sample. And for those of you who are knowledgeable and in this collecting community and have been paying attention, I think you will have noticed, as I have, that the BATF is getting much more restrictive in the way they are treating the movement of post-86 dealer sample machine guns.
So,
because the movement of those guns, when it goes from, say, a dealer here who's an active dealer and a dealer over there who's an active dealer, the receiving dealer needs to have what they call, and you referenced it earlier, a law letter.
That's where this
or a law demonstration letter, where you go to the chief of police of some entity in your within, you're in their jurisdiction in the state in which you reside as a dealer, and if they request a demonstration of, let's say, I want to see a demonstration of an M60 machine gun. We're going to potentially use it in the department to mount on our urban armored vehicle, and the chief of police on his letterhead writes up this letter to the dealer requesting a demonstration of an M60 machine gun. They will include, all the information about the department, and they've gotten to the point now where the BATF wants to see how many people are in the department, what are you going to use this for, and they really want to see an intention to purchase, indicated in this chief's letter. And once that letter is signed by the chief of police and given to the receiving FFL SOT dealer, that's when that dealer can submit the transfer paperwork from the other dealer who has the Post-May 86 dealer sample gun, submit that transfer application into the BATF. What I understand, and this is very, very recent and clear information to me, is the BATF is actively calling the chief of police who signed the letter and verifying that, yes, indeed, the chief did do it. This wasn't some kind of a ginned up letter that somebody did. And yes, there is a genuine, valid reason for the chief to want a demonstration of this particular machine gun and this particular model of machine gun. For example, very recently in a conference, an imports conference, the BATF was putting up a screen, and they said they showed a picture of M60. This has valid law enforcement use. And then an M16, this has valid law enforcement use. And then they flashed up a picture of a Russian Model 1910 belt-fed Maxim water-cooled machine gun. And they said, this doesn't have a valid application for law enforcement use.
Any seriously classy police department that wants a machine gun knows that a brass jacket Maxim is.
Oh, absolutely.
So absolutely. I guess the purpose here is, if you are registered as a machine gun dealer, the idea is you are buying and selling machine guns, and you're doing it for law enforcement and security organizations.
Right.
And I guess you can't just, at will, buy and sell machine guns. You have to be able to prove that it is a current ongoing business deal, basically.
When it comes to post-May 86 dealer samples, yes. There needs to be a valid reason for you acquiring these post-May 86 dealer samples. But wait, there is a time where you don't need that law enforcement letter to acquire that. You still need to be an active FFL SOT dealer, law enforcement, or government. But remember when I talked about the person who was relinquishing their license as an FFL SOT? If you have, Ian McCollum, an FFL SOT license, you have some post-May 86 dealer samples, and you are going to relinquish your license and go out of business, not do it anymore. Under those circumstances, the BATF does not require a law enforcement letter when you transfer those post-May 86 dealer samples. They still have to go to another active FFL SOT dealer, but they don't have to have that law enforcement letter when you're relinquishing them.
Because I've seen stuff about this does require a letter, this doesn't, and it was a little bit weird. Like,
that's correct.
Why? But that makes sense.
And all of this, and I could go in for, this could be almost a college level graduate course here.
I'm sure it could be.
But there are also certain classifications of FFL dealers, like manufacturers, they don't need a letter either to acquire something like that. Certain classifications of federal firearms license holders don't need that letter.
Okay.
You can just come and go.
Okay. So the basic information is, if you're just a dude or a girl who wants a machine gun, you're looking for a transferable machine gun.
Yes, you want, and that's correct. And something which is another subclassification within all of this is a deactivated machine gun.
A Dewat.
You mentioned that, a Dewat. A Dewat is a term that is doesn't really have any legal meaning in the BATF anymore. There was a program in place after World War II, which was Dewat, Deactivated War Trophy.
Okay.
And what they were doing is they were essentially encouraging veterans who had brought back machine guns from the wars to deactivate them by plugging the chamber and then registering them so that they would have accountability. Let's really let's say this right up front. The BATF's purpose, as it pertains to these National Firearms Act weapons, are to maintain the orderly and accurate record of who lawfully and legally owns these guns, and the orderly, legal, and lawful transfer of these guns from person to person or entity to entity, as the case may be. And that's what they want to do. They want the registry to be accurate, and they want to know where the machine guns are, and they want to make sure the machine guns are in the hands of people who are properly qualified to own them.
Okay.
So a Dewat would be a deactivated machine gun, and that is the term I'm going to use from here on out. When I say deactivated machine gun, you might want to hear the word Dewat, and it's perfectly okay. That's, again, a colloquial term.
We should probably point out, though, that this is not the same definition of deactivated as they have like in Europe right now, where deactivated means thoroughly destroyed. Deactivated, as it applies to the United States, can mean a wide variety of different things that in some cases are as simple as like, I got rid of the firing pin.
That's right. Well, it's a legal status. A legal status deactivated could be as simple. It could be anywhere from the chamber has been plugged and with a rod has been put in the chamber. It's been hit with a hammer to make sure it's seated firmly, and then it's welded in and welded the rod into the chamber, around the chamber, and the barrel in the chamber welded to the receiver. Okay, that's pretty well deactivated. They could go another step, and I've seen it where they grind the bolt off at a 90-degree angle.
That's pretty serious.
And that's pretty serious deactivation. Or, and it has happened, I've seen it, it could be a deactivated gun as simply as there's no bolt in it. I have an amnesty form in a gun that's in on a gun that's in the upcoming auction. That on the amnesty form, which I have a copy, it says no bolt present in gun. This is solely a war trophy. That's the original amnesty form. The BATF interpreted that to be a deactivated gun. How much work would it take to make that gun live? Acquire a bolt and put it in. Another very high-profile gun.
No, wait a minute. You can't like put a bolt in it, then it wouldn't be deactivated. You can't make a new machine gun, can you?
You can, and that's a very great segue that you can take a registered deactivated machine gun, but it's already got to be registered for private individual ownership, and you can apply through the BATF on a Form 1 to reactivate this machine gun. And once they've approved that reactivation, then you can take whatever steps you need to reactivate it. That as an individual. Another route to reactivation would be to transfer that deactivated machine gun to one of these specialized manufacturer dealers that I have mentioned before, and then they can conduct the legal activation of the machine gun by sending the paperwork in to the BATF.
I will say this because I have direct experience in it. I bought my show shot as a deactivated war trophy gun, and the chamber was plugged and welded up, but good, and the face of the bolt was welded up, and the barrel extension was welded, just kind of tack welded onto the receiver, and I filed the paperwork to reactivate it. And you say apply, but there's not really any question in the process. Like, you fill out the form and you send it in, and they process it and they send it back. It's not a question of maybe they will approve it and maybe they won't. Like, if you meet the fixed requirements.
If you meet the requirements and the gun is properly registered,
right,
and if you got it transferred to you as a deactivated gun, you've got evidence that it's properly registered.
Exactly.
Right? It's going to be approved.
So I got mine back approved, and I took a Dremel tool to the weld that attached the destroyed barrel to the receiver, and I kind of ground it off a little bit, and then I whacked it with a hammer, and the barrel went pop and came out. And I had found and purchased a new bolt and new barrel, and I put them in, and the gun runs now, and it is legally registered as a live machine gun now.
And that is a route that many people take, and many people have been very happy to bid on deactivated machine guns at auction, because many people have acquired parts over the years and have had the foresight to say, I want one of those guns someday. I'm going to buy these parts while I have a chance to get this parts kit or these necessary parts now, in the hopes that someday I'll find a deactivated gun, and then I'll have what I need to do this and bring it into an activated status.
Yeah.
And once it's there in its activated status, then it's a live machine gun, and it will incur that $200 transfer tax.
Right.
It's worth noting that a legally deactivated machine gun, when you go to transfer it, let's say I have one, and it's a curio and relic gun, and you want to buy it in Arizona, and you're a curio and relic license holder, it's a different form, it's a Form 5. We can execute that Form 5 from me to you. You send it in, and when it's approved, there's no transfer tax. It's there's no tax paid on a deactivated gun.
I suspect that was a much bigger deal in 1946 than it is today. That $200 is
big deal then.
a little tiny piece of the price now, but it was a huge amount.
Great little anecdote. A gentleman was a World War II veteran, Philippine Islands, Pacific Theater. He acquired several Japanese guns there, brought them back to his home in the Midwestern United States, enjoyed them. They were live guns. He had managed to get a bunch of Japanese ammunition back at the same time. He was a
resourceful guy.
Thoughtful, forward-thinking man, and he brought those back, and he was shooting those guns after World War II and into the 50s, and then and everybody around the local small town knew he had them. It was no problem. And then one day, and he related this to me, and then one day he got a knock on the door, and it was an agent for the Bureau, the Department of Treasury, actually, and said, "I understand you have machine guns here." And he said, "Well, yes, I do." And he said, "Where'd you get them?" He said, "I got them from the Japanese, fair and square on the Philippines." And, do you shoot them? "Yeah, of course I do. They're mine." He said, "Well, you see, they got to be registered." "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, if you want to register them, probably the best thing for you to do, let's go downtown and we'll weld up the chambers, and then I'll help you do it." And he went downtown to the local garage, welded the chambers up, and the BATF, or the treasurer agent, brought a portable typewriter out of his car and typed up the forms, and they registered them at no cost. The alternative, he said, is, "Well, you can pay your $200, and I'm not going to pay $200 for those. That's a lot of money,
especially per gun for several guns."
Right, several guns.
Some might say that's blatantly unfair of the government to do that, but that's neither here nor there.
Probably one of the most amusing examples of a deactivated gun that I brought into the auction company was a very high-profile gun, and the method of deactivating it was plugging the chamber, and it was said so right in the form, plugged chamber, and I said, "Yeah, that's plugged chamber," and I got the gun in, I looked at it, and the chamber was plugged. It was plugged with a pencil. Someone had taken a pencil, sharpened it to the point where it was the right length, put it in the chamber, and closed the bolt on the chamber, and the chamber was indeed plugged. And when I called the son of the deceased original registrant of it, I asked him about that. I said, "Plugged chamber?" He said, "Yeah, there had been some other kind of a soft metal plug or whatever in there, and it fell out one day, and I didn't really feel or know about putting it back in, so I just sharpened the pencil up, put it in there, and there was still a plugged chamber." They're out there, and they surface every year.
Yeah.
A number of them do, and there is a great demand for deactivated machine guns, because with the appropriate amount of work, and sometimes something is as easy as taking a pencil out of the chamber. Other times it's extensive welding and grinding and tremendous drilling of the many holes through the barrels and so forth and so on, and grievous injury, and it could be thousands of dollars in parts and labor.
But especially for a rare and very desirable machine gun,
right?
That's
certain kinds of guns.
Yeah.
It's if you find yourself a 1904 U.S. Maxim that's deactivated and needs a lot of work, it's probably worth all the work it takes.
Yeah.
Same thing with certain other models.
All right. Well, hopefully that has been educational. Hopefully that has answered some of your questions, cleared up some of the common misconceptions about the status of machine guns and this whole NFA machine gun collecting thing.
It's very complex, and it can be very daunting. And there are lots of other special little idiosyncrasies that are out there. I've made some statements, and there have been some general statements. I'm sure many of you who are very knowledgeable and more knowledgeable than me will say, well, what about this situation? What about that situation? They're out there. I could talk about them, but it would be almost a graduate level course.
Right. Just an introduction for now.
Right. This is just an introduction.
So,
and an overview.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you, Retired Master Sergeant Keene, for coming on with us today.
I appreciate being able to do something to help the NFA community and would-be collectors.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.